Hello, everybody. Dr. Dan Miller, Historical Solutions, LLC. Welcome to our podcast on the 250 River with Dr. Dan. This is episode 34. We're going to be looking at 250 years ago. Real people, real life, real stories. Ending in the week, July 3rd, 1775. So right before your holiday, which was last week. Our sponsor of today's episode, who I would like to thank, is a public school that is reopening in the town of New Bern in North Carolina. The public schools reopening will be any day now, and they're asking for anyone who has a youth, no further specifications, anyone who has a youth can learn at our school, our reopened public school, any of, some of, all of, one of the following: English, Latin, or French, writing, arithmetic, a couple of types of trigonometry, astronomy, navigation, geography, surveying. The use of globes will also be available. And then finally, the Italian method of bookkeeping. So, if any of those topics interest you or a youth you know, feel free to contact Mr. Davis, the printer of the only newspaper in town, that town being New Bern, North Carolina. Thank you to the reopened public school there for their sponsorship, 99% fact, 1% fiction, of today's episode 34. So, hope you've had a good week, and I really appreciate you stopping by here for a very special episode. I went off and forgot my my graphics. You veterans know that it's a tremendous display. You newcomers, it's just a sheet of paper with the numbers 1, 2, 3, or 4, and 5 written on them. So, but incredible all the same. So, we have got a special edition of our top 5 for this week. I think it's the first time I've done this, and it's because of leadership is why I'm doing it. So, we're taking one thing and we're breaking it down into 5 pieces. That'll be our top 5. You can see today's full entry over at my website, historicalsolutions.com, under American Redux. Look for July 3rd, 1775 along the right-hand side of the front page. For everything else that we're not going to be looking at in the podcast. But we've got five pieces broken out. Here we go. So what's the one thing? If you've seen the entry, you might have a guess as to what it is. It is George Washington on July 3rd, 1775, on his first full on-the-job day as the newly appointed commander commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, a newly created entity from the decision of the Second Continental Congress a couple of weeks before. So Washington has been traveling from Philadelphia to the outskirts of Boston, and this is the first full day on the job site, if you will. This is where several thousand men have armed themselves and have semi-encircled British forces in the town of Boston after the Lexington and Concord clash, and after specifically the Battle of Bunker Hill in mid-June. Washington arrives on the scene here, first full day, job site, July 3rd. So let's start with number 5. With number 5 on our list of top 5, he gives a speech. Nobody knows, to my knowledge, nobody knows what the speech is. And there's a couple of things here. I wonder, and then this is all leadership. You're the leader, okay? There's a lot to learn from this, it seems to me. So, do you need to give a speech? First and foremost, do you want to give a speech? Are you good in that kind of setting? Or is it not something you tend to seek out? Washington decides to give a short speech. That's our number 5 slot in our top 5. I do want to make a quick point here in passing. We don't know what the speech offered. We don't know what he said, to my knowledge. If you know where it is, send it to me. I haven't found it. Which takes me to my point about it. It's been forgotten. It's been ignored. It's been considered unimportant historically. There are many other speeches by Washington that'll have far greater importance and far greater staying power in the American mind than this one ever did. They didn't even record it then. So I find that a really interesting thing. Did he miss an opportunity? Is that what that means? Or does it mean that it just got overtaken and overrun and overlooked by subsequent events that begin to unfold? I don't know that. But my question to you, do you give a speech, and are you good at doing so? And if you do give a speech, what do you want to say? So that's number 5. Number 4, he reads from the book of Psalms, I've found. I don't know what book, I don't know what passage, but the book of Psalms, he's reading a passage from somewhere in it, in the Old Testament of the Bible. There's a lot of places he could go to. There's a surprising amount about warfare and violence and enemies and victory over enemies, and by that it's meant clearly armed conflict and strife and killing and everything else. So, but we don't know which passage from the book of Psalms that he read. Question for you is, or not, maybe just something for you to reflect on, and you could have already started, but do you want to read from something that is spiritual? Do you want to read from something that is from up here for people to be inspired by, to draw courage from, to draw purpose from, and everything else? Or do you run the risk of dividing people who don't particularly believe in it or care about it or whatever it might be? So that's his choice from the book of Psalms. So what about you? Give a speech, we read from the Psalms. Do you want to read from something? And what would it be, and why would you want to do that? Number 3, Washington has known for about 24 to 36 hours before this ceremony under the elm tree on one of the small hills that semicircle surrounds Boston. This is where this ceremony is occurring under what came to be known as the Washington Elm. So he's been there 24 hours or so, but this is the first time on the job site. He already knows, this is number 3, he already knows that there's all kinds of tensions among various officers, people pissed off, resentful. Why did that guy get promoted over me? Why does that guy have seniority over me? Why does he have that title and I have this title? On and on and on. There's several people who are already complaining, openly or not openly, which may be even worse than the open complaints. So that's already a problem. That is. Can you solve it? No. Can you manage it? That's going to have to be how you do it. You have to manage that problem. We'd like to think that it'll all go away with the speech or with the book of Psalms, or something. Everybody's going to be inspired and uplifted and set aside their petty jealousies and whatnot. But the truth is they won't. And if anything, the jealousies and the pettiness could potentially grow. So that's number 3. He's got to already deal with that. And I wonder what your strategy is, what your go-to is in dealing with that kind of issue among your followers, among your core team members. Number 2. Number 2 is what? Yes. I'm calling it the fit-in. Not the sit-in, but the fit-in. So remember we said the Army's been created by the Second Continental Congress. Well, there were some units created in the whirlwind of that moment a few weeks ago. I don't know, 6, 8, 10 of them, by decree, by not legislation, by the decision of the Continental Congress. But you had these thousands of guys already there who are militia, volunteers. They've turned up, they're hanging out, they're armed, most of them. So we're now in the process of beginning to fit those units, those existing units, into this new structure. They're going to turn into Continental Infantry units. The 3rd Connecticut, the 1st Massachusetts, the 5th New Hampshire, and so on and so forth. So we're in the process now of starting a fit-in. Now, these are guys who range the gamut. I mean, you've got grizzled, white-haired, 3-day growth of beard folks who've been in the French and Indian War 20 years earlier. You got boys. And you've got a lot of people who weren't around at all, who are also older and so forth. So, because there is this kind of popular uprising that's occurred in the Massachusetts area and New England itself. So you've really got a lot you're trying to deal with in terms of getting everybody to kind of fit into this new structure that is supposed to be a regular army, an aspiring professional army. Now, they don't want it to be mercenary-like, which is how they regard standing armies and professional armies in Europe. They want this to be properly inspired, motivated, and behaving as people. Virtuous, that would be their word. We want our soldiers to be virtuous. So it's a tall order. And remember, we talked about the petty jealousies of the officers here that's already cropped up. Well, these soldiers aren't going to suddenly, overnight, turn into virtuous men of arms. It's going to be a long, nasty, dirty, uneven, ragged, and often unreliable process that starts today. By the way, just so you know, Washington, first order here after we step out from under the elm tree. Okay, let's get everybody to send in their numbers. Send in your units' returns is what they're called. Numbers of men fit, numbers of men not fit. Let's send in the numbers. This unit's got 55. That unit's got 49. This unit over here's got 72, and on and on. So he sets out a framework for here's what the returns need to have. So we're starting to collect basic ground level data. That's his first instinct as the commander-in-chief of this new entity called the Continental Army. I find that really interesting. One other thing, and we're going to leave this point. He's also realizing, and he knows, but again, day one, job site, he's breathing the air of where he is. We're outside, we're Greater Boston, we're New England. Remember, he's Virginian. He's not been up here that much. He's been up here a few times in his life, but not a ton. This is where the war is. We've got, oh, by the way, some of the group, oh, here's something else. We've got another Congress to be concerned about. Remember, the Second Continental Congress creates it, but there's the Massachusetts Provincial Congress that is the law of the land from a resistance, protest, and American uprising perspective. That Congress is the law of the land in Massachusetts. So that's a Congress we got to think through. The other New England colonies in the Union, in the American Union, they have legislatures or assemblies or some version of a Congress too. Connecticut, Rhode Island, and so on. So this is the lay of the land here. Everybody's got an eye on Canada. They've already approved trying to invade Canada and make it a 14th colony, a 14th location of resistance in the American Union. So I'm breathing the air for the first time on the job site. That's part of the fit-in. Number one, Washington gets on his horse. It's a beautiful white Arabian stallion, I think is what I've found. So you can just imagine that thing. Gorgeous. Art in motion. Gets on his horse and he starts moving around this semicircle to inspect the lines, inspect the entrenchments, inspect whatever's been dug up and had a barrel put on top of it as a kind of a quasi wall of protection against a potential British attack. And of course, everything he sees is through one lens, which is what's beyond it, which is Boston, where the enemy is. And it's It's the difference between reading a report and being there. He sees how close they are and how any hour, and there's already been a report, a rumor. Oh my God, there's going to be an attack. We've heard a report. There's going to be another enemy attack. Turns out 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes passed. That looks like that was just a rumor. But the point is, the next one might not be false. Any hour, they could launch an attack, smash through these little bitty hills we've got created, these little bitty walls we've built up, and we could be dead before we even start, including me as the leader. So that's the reality of where he is and what he is and what everybody is right now, July 3rd, 1775. Life gets a vote. And the vote is, we've got a paper-thin line here with untrained and untested people that's got a name called the Continental Army, but that's about all it's got. And tomorrow is July 4th. And doesn't make any hill of beans worth of difference as to that day. The significance of that day is a year off, maybe further, depending on how you define it. So that's who we are, and that's where we are in leadership. 250 years ago, July 3rd, 1775. What's the big idea, Dan? So what's the big idea? This is how the American Union, capital U, the American Union goes to war. It's in weird increments, a step, a half step, a quarter step, a slip step. These weird increments moving forward. That's how the American Union goes to war. It's in New England with a whole wild layer of various authority makers and lawmakers in these various New England colony legislatures, assembly, congresses, they call themselves. That's part of the American Union going to war. It's got an eye north to Canada. Washington did agree to that, but that's what he's looking at. Life got a vote. So this is the American Union going to war, and finally, it's a ragtag, largely unruly and misbehaving, and frankly a little tense and frictious group of guys trying to come together to get to a condition where they can wage war against one of the world's most tested and most proven military forces anywhere on the planet. That's where we are. Life got a vote. July 3rd, 1775. I'm Dr. Dan Miller, Historical Solutions, LLC. I am really happy you spent some time with me. You hung out with me. Got to tell you something. American Union goes to war. You're going to see a really interesting expression of that in the next edition of Americanism Redux, both on the written side and on the podcast side. Thanks so much. Have a great week.